everybody, and welcome to day one, lesson one of the Learn to Crochet the Easy Way Masterclass. This is a 14-day course designed to help you feel confident with the basics of crochet and get you making everything that you've dreamed of. I'm your teacher, Sigoni, and today we are going to talk about the basic materials you need to get started. But before we get started, make sure to download the free sample of my Learn to Crochet Masterclass ebook, which I will link in the description box below. For every video in this course, there's a related page inside the ebook, which is 70 plus pages long, filled with picture tutorials, both left and right-handed, checklists, reference sheets, printable PDFs for both of the patterns that we'll be working on so you can follow along, and access to all videos ad-free inside the Teachable platform. So that's a lot in one. Now, let's get on to today's lesson. Today's lesson is about all of the very basic crochet materials. We can't get started if we don't have materials, right? One of the great things about crochet is it's one of the cheapest hobbies to get started. And notice that I said get started because once you become addicted, you're going to start buying all the yarn. So what do you really need to get started? You will need some yarn, crochet hooks, tapestry needles, stitch markers, and scissors. But just know that these are the basic materials you'll need to get started that you'll use almost every time you complete a project. And later on, I'll talk about some more supplies that might help you along the way. I will also leave a link down below that talks about my absolute favorite crochet tools. And these are things that you can use now and things that you can always just remember to pick up later. First things first, let's talk about yarn. What is yarn? We probably all know what yarn is. But this yarn is what's used to create the fabric of your project, whether that is coffee cozies or stuffed animals, blankets, garments, anything that you make, the fabric is created by the yarn. And the yarn is classified by the fiber that it's created out of and its weight classification. Again, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Yarn fibers. There are many different types of fibers out there. There's polyester, cotton, acrylic, natural fibers, and so much more. When you're first learning, acrylic, in my opinion, is the best way to start. It's easy to work with, it's cheaper, and it comes in a variety of sizes. Now let's talk about the 7 classifications of yarn weight. Lace is 0, superfine is 1, fine is 2, DK or lightweight is 3, medium weight, Aran or worsted is 4, bulky is 5, super bulky is 6, and jumbo is 7. So there are 7 different weight classifications for yarn. And this isn't talking about the actual weight of the yarn. This is talking about the thickness of each strand. Now, here are a few things to remember when you're buying yarn as a beginner. Medium weight or bulky weight, that's weight 4 or 5, are the best to practice with when you're first starting out. And you can find these numbers on the label of the skein when you go to the store. Also, it's best to use a lighter color whenever you're first starting out because it's easier to see those stitches. So try not to get those darker colors just while you're practicing this 14-day course. Then you do you, and I will talk about some tools that will help you see those stitches a little bit better, but that's at another date. Another thing to remember is to stay away from the novelty or the fuzzy yarn. Just for now, I know they're beautiful, they're so soft, but for now, let's stay away from that because it is a lot tougher to see your stitches and you'll have to learn how to feel for them, and let's just stay away for now. Also, try to stay away from the variegated yarn as well. So this is yarn that has lots of different colors inside it. Let me show you an example. This is variegated yarn. As beautiful as it is, when you're first starting out, it is a little bit tougher to see those stitches, and we're really going to learn how to recognize our stitches so that we can make them more uniform and straight. So to recap on the best yarn you can choose to get started is to use a lighter colored solid yarn that is a 4 or 5 weight, so medium weight or bulky weight. And every time that you look at a ball of yarn, you'll see on the label what hook size that it recommends. So when you're starting out, definitely look at the yarn label and see what hook they recommend and pick one up for yourself. Or you can buy a complete beginner set. And now that we're talking about crochet hooks, let's talk about the different types. Just like with yarn, there are many different types of crochet hooks. There are aluminum, plastic, bamboo, and ergonomic hooks. Now, I absolutely 100% recommend Clover Amour crochet hooks. They are my favorite hooks, but they are on the pricier side. So I know when you're starting out, that's not the most fun option. So another great option is the aluminum hooks. These are a lot cheaper and they're really great to use. They're light and easy to grasp. But if you have any sort of hand pain, then I highly recommend going with an ergonomic hook like Clover. Now let's quickly talk about tapestry needles. Tapestry needles are not the same thing as sewing needles. With a sewing needle, you have a sharp point at the end. With tapestry needles, they have a larger hole for you to thread the yarn through, and then the end of the tapestry needle is a soft tip, so it's not gonna prick your finger. You don't wanna use a sewing needle with your yarn because whenever you're weaving in your ends, which we'll discuss later, you could prick your yarn through the stitch and then it could unravel or fall apart, and we just want to avoid that at all costs. So definitely pick up some tapestry needles. They are super cheap and they're great to have. I would pick up more than one because you will lose them in between your couch cushions. Stitch markers. These are such a great tool, especially for beginners. Now, you don't need them to get started, but I highly, highly recommend them because it will help us to identify our stitches later on. And we will also talk about how to keep your edges straight using stitch markers. So these are a very good tool to have. And again, they are also cheap, so go ahead and pick some of those up too. There are different types of stitch markers. There are locking stitch markers, which is my personal favorite. They have a little clip at the end where you can lock it and you won't lose your place. Or you can buy the kind that doesn't have any lock and you can just hook it onto your stitch like that. It's whatever you think will work the best for you. Just make sure that you don't get the circle stitch markers because that is for knitting, not for crochet. And lastly, you will need some scissors. Now, you don't have to go out and buy some fancy embroidery scissors. You can just use what you have at home. There have been plenty of times where I've gone into the kitchen and used my kitchen scissors, or whipped my son's crafting supplies out, and they work just fine. Now, here are a few other supplies that you don't absolutely need, but they would definitely help if you had. So the first thing is a project bag. If you are creating a project, you'll want to have some place to put it and store it. So this can be plastic bins, it can be a plastic bag, it can be a giant Ziploc bag. It can be an actual bag that is purposely for crochet. So any of those will do, as long as you have a place to set aside your work and pick it back up later. Next is a crochet hook case. So this is so you don't lose any of your hooks, because again, it will happen. Whenever you are crocheting, you get really comfortable and sometimes they just fall in between the cracks, or you're working on one project and you're working on another project and you just need to keep all your hooks in one place. So get yourself a crochet hook case. A lot of beginner hook sets on Amazon come with cases, so I think that that's really great, and that's where I would start if I were you. All of the materials that I've talked about today I will have linked in the description so that you can go check them out for yourself. Now, the last tool that you might need or would benefit from is just a notebook, a pen and a notebook. Or you can use your iPad like me. It's my favorite go-to notebook tool. So a notebook would be great for taking notes on the pattern you're working on, or even if you are following along with this course and you want to stay up to date with where you are, you can do all of that inside your notebook, take notes as you go. That way you don't have to come back here later and rewatch everything. You can get all of the things that I've mentioned in your local craft store. So Joann Fabrics, Michaels, I think most of these items are at Walmart. Oh, Hobby Lobby, and I can't think of any more. But most of these places will have everything that I've listed today. And you can also find most of these on Amazon as well. The only thing I will say about Amazon is it's not the best place to buy yarn. Yarn tends to be overpriced on Amazon, and their prices are just weird. So if you're gonna buy yarn, you might want to just go to the store anyway, because you get to feel it and squish it and see the beautiness of the yarn aisle that you will soon become obsessed with. You know how they say, I like long walks on the beach? Well, I like long walks down the yarn aisle. You know what I mean? Well, you probably don't, but you will. Now just a little tip on hooks. Like I said earlier, there are tons of different kinds of hooks out there, and we're all gonna like different things. So you might need to experiment with a couple different kinds of hooks. If one isn't working for you, just try a different one. If you're feeling hand pain and cramping, then it might be the hook and you wanna change it up and see if that helps. Now, if you wanna learn all the details to yarn and hooks and the different styles and fibers and things like that, I will leave a link to 2 separate posts where I talk all about yarn and all about hooks. And I also have answers to the most frequently asked questions about the 2 of these. So head over there if you want a more in-depth explanation about yarn and hooks. Okay, well that is pretty much it for lesson 1, which is the basic materials to get started with crochet. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you're excited to start this whole 14-day journey with me. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about how to hold your hook and how to hold your yarn. And we'll also talk about tension, what it is, and why it's important. And this is a big lesson that you might want to rewatch a couple times. Again, check the description box below where you can download a free sample of my Learn to Crochet Masterclass ebook, as well as links to each video in this course as they come out. As always, I am your teacher, Sigoni, and I will see you in lesson 2.